Well, hi there, everybody. This is Dr. Schroder with this week's video introduction to week number 3 of our course in evidence-based practice. And once again, a very nice, very forward week this week. The primary task was we had 2 assignments. One was to have a interview with or talk with a librarian in either the school library, another school library, or possibly in the library if you're in a teaching institution and you're a medical library. You really want to talk, and the idea is that get in touch with and really consult with the librarian because really your librarian is, they are your key to finding good information. They are the experts in knowing the databases and how to do searches and how to really locate information. So those of us that do research, all of us have our librarian friends that we rely on really quite a bit. And so that was really the whole point of this exercise. You wrote a paper, a very brief paper, where you identified some measurable objectives and what it was that you wanted to get out of that talk with the librarian. You discussed how you're going to use Boolean strategies and the different search terms. That was really the whole focus of the exercise and the experience with the librarian, and then just an evaluation of that. It doesn't take me too long to grade those. I anticipate that I should have those graded probably by midweek. So you should have the grades for this course, I would assume probably by about Wednesday. I'm recording this on Monday morning, so I would assume that by Wednesday you should have the grades done for week number 2. The discussion question is where you reported how you would use your different search terms and the different keywords that you would use to try to locate information in the library. So that was your the 2 main things that you had to do today. And what most of my feedback has been, and what my feedback when I give you grading this week is going to be, is primarily more than anything else, it's on your PICO question. Remember, I posted some information last week about the format of the PICO question. It's important to have all 5 components. You have to have identify a population. You have to have by the time you get to week number 3, and when you do your evidence-based practice paper, you have to have a pretty good idea of what your actual intervention is going to be. It needs to be something concise and something specific enough and tangible enough that it will be something that you'll be able to implement with your staff. You also have to have some way of comparing that intervention, so your comparison needs to also be indicated, and of course a measurable outcome. And then the time frame, and the time frame being the amount of time that you're going to track data to see if your intervention was adequate. So I've left quite a bit of feedback in the class about that, and so if I'm continuing to give you feedback on your PICO, please really either send me an email or feel free to post a question in the class about how to better word it. Sometimes it's easy to overthink a PICO question, and to try to include too much information or not really think in terms of what is it specifically that you really want to do with this intervention. What is usually the issues that students run into is having an intervention that is too vague or not really clear, or having an outcome that isn't measurable. It's very general, for example, to say that you're going, in intervention, a new program to teach diabetes or to teach AIDS prevention or something along those lines will result in better health outcomes overall. It's like, well, that's great, but what outcomes are you going to measure? I mean, specifically, what do you need to look at? So you're going to be looking at specifically and identifying specifically an increase or decrease in something typically. An increase in compliance with treatment, a decrease in the number of infections, or a decrease in the number of hospital days utilized, depending on whatever your intervention will be. But that's really kind of sort of the key thing. You're going to really need that, especially when you get your evidence-based practice part 2 paper. So don't be afraid to continue to revise that PICO statement. If you receive feedback or if it doesn't seem quite clear, then feel free to go ahead and revise it. You will get more feedback on that in your evidence-based practice part 3 paper. I've also posted some clarification or answered some questions at least on how the different appendices are used. You'll see that when you go into the class for this evidence-based practice part 3 paper, you have a paper template, and so please follow the paper template. Also, very important, make sure that you follow the paper rubric. The rubric has more specific information about what the paper will contain. So you want to make sure that you follow the rubric along with the paper template. There are 4 appendices posted in class. The first one is Appendix D. These are called appendices, by the way, not because they're necessarily going to be appendices in your paper, although 2 of those forms will be, but they're appendices in the Johns Hopkins Nursing textbook. So the Johns Hopkins Nursing Evidence-Based Practice book has these listed as appendices, and that's why we refer to them as appendices. And Appendix D is just a table that shows you the levels of evidence and the 7 levels of evidence and how are they defined and what kind of article or what kind of research comprises what type of evidence. You're going to be that's going to be reflected, and you're going to use that information in your table of evidence, which is also referred to as your Appendix G, and then also in your actual article appraisals, which is going to be your Appendix E or Appendix F. Appendix E is used for research studies and research articles. Appendix F is used to appraise non-research studies, such as clinical practice guidelines, articles or letters written in a medical journal, that kind of information. In other words, it isn't anything that has quantitative data tied to it. So that's going to be how those appendices are used. The Appendix G, the table of evidence, is going to be included in your paper where it says where you're going to insert it. Now, you're going to actually be inserting the table. The easiest way to do this is to cut and paste the table, do the table separately, and then cut and paste it into your paper. Likewise, for your table is going to list your 5 top pieces of evidence. So you're going to have 5 articles on this table of evidence. Each article is going to need to have either that Appendix E or the Appendix F used as an appraisal tool. And those appraisal tools are going to be included as an appendix in the paper at the end of your paper. An appendix always comes at the end of your paper after the reference page. Again, the easiest way to do this is typically to do them separately in a separate document and then cut and paste them. You can delete those extra pages and those extra sections of the paper that do not refer to the type of study that you're using. You'll see that each of the appraisal tools, for example, Appraisal E, it starts with, is this a qualitative study or a quantitative study? If you're reviewing a qualitative study, you don't have to include it in the pages that pertain to qualitative appraisal. They'll simply be blank. So it is perfectly fine to go ahead and just delete those. That will bring your document down to either 2 or 3 pages long. Each one of those appraisal documents will be just 2 or 3 pages long. So you can have 5 articles, 5 appraisals, and again, they're either going to be appraisal tool E or appraisal tool F, depending on whether they're research or non-research. And that is the basis, and that's the basic bottom line of what is going to be in your Evidence-Based Practice Part 2 paper. So again, it starts with your PICO question, and this first part of the paper is going to be a discussion of the evidence that you found, how you found it, and then ending with those 5 articles. You do not need a conclusion for this paper. You're going to be writing a conclusion in your Evidence-Based Part 2 paper, which is essentially a continuation of the same assignment. So, so I hope that that's clear. Most of the questions that I get in class tend to be with students having trouble with the cutting and pasting and just the mechanics of working with the appendices and working with the tables. I will be posting, as questions come up, some YouTube videos. This is one of those things where depending on depending on your software program, whether you're using a Mac or a PC, and which version of Microsoft Word you're using, there's different ways to do this. And, frankly, it can be difficult sometimes because invariably when you cut and paste some of these documents in, it will sometimes change the formatting, and so that can be kind of maddening here. So try not to get too frustrated with it. Post questions as you uh, as they come up, and I will try to help you with that as best I can. Um, but essentially, you're going to be turning in one document, not so. In other words, the appraisal tools are going to be included as attachments or appendices within the paper itself. This is part of the scientific writing aspect of the class, and it's how articles are written. So understanding and learning how to uh, format tables and how to include cut and pasted information is sort of an important task to learn here for because it's something that we do whenever we have an article that we want to be publishable, and that's really kind of sort of the goal here. So that's kind of a lot of information, I know, in this roughly 11-minute video. I'll be checking the questions at least twice daily, at least once in the morning, and then once again in the afternoon, evening, sometimes more often than that. This is the week where I probably get more questions than anything else. So I'm here to help you. If you would like to schedule a time to talk with me on the phone, I'm also available for phone consultation. Sometimes that is the easiest way to work through some of these issues, especially if you feel like you're particularly stuck. And I look forward to another great week of discussion. The discussion this week is going to focus on understanding the difference between a meta-synthesis and a meta-analysis. So there's some materials in the class to help understand that, and that's going to be the discussion focus this week. So I look forward to seeing you in class, and I look forward to another great week of discussion. Let me know if you have questions.